Ellington, pick up the phone.
Playing with fire.
I don't do important things on a Saturday night.
New drama, Ellington, soon on HTV.
So, where are we off to today, Mum? Toys R Us, perhaps? What? Oh, no, it's a supermarket. We'll never get a parking space, you know that, don't you? Oh, that was a bit of luck. Come on, Mum, we haven't got all day. I've got a naughty video to watch. Nice set of wheels, girls. Shame about the hats.
They're all the rage in Milan, darling.
Philistine.
Ooh, women. Oh, hold up. Who do you think I am, Will Carling?
At Safeway, we're doing everything we can to make shopping easier.
Smell that?
With parent and child parking spaces right next to the entrance, a wide range of trolleys and a bag packing and carry-out service.
Oi, what's that man doing with our shopping? Now, I could be wrong, but I think he's following us. Good idea, Mum. We'll lose him in here.
Safeway, lightening the load.
If I'm cold, I'll turn up the heat. I don't care about global warming.
We should fit proper draft excluders.
Oh, don't start.
We're paying to heat this house twice. Once to heat the room and once to heat the draft. Look, we must fit draft excluders.
We could get a bigger cat.
Cutting down drafts is just one way to cut your heating bills. For more, call this number.
Kellogg's Fruit and Fiber's delicious combination of fruit, nuts and flakes means you never know what's going to come next. For instance, 1 minute it's... and the next it might be... See what I mean? Absolutely delicious.
Kellogg's Fruit and Fiber. Every mouthful is a new experience.
Anthony Hopkins, Jodie Foster.
All good things to those who wait.
The movie premiere of The Silence of the Lambs, coming soon on HTV. Prime time, Monday at 10:40 on HTV.
There's film romance tonight at 10:40 and Say Anything.
Wales This Week, the programme that's not afraid to go undercover. Wales This Week, the programme that's not afraid to investigate. Wales This Week, the programme that's not afraid to challenge. Wales This Week, it's back every Thursday at 7:30 on HTV.
Now we join ITN in London for the news.
From ITN News at 10 with John Suchet.
John Major's message, the party's not for changing. Violent and tragic end to the Israeli hostage drama. Jail for the British couple who tried to smuggle a baby. And back where she started, Fiona Campbell's walk is over. Good evening. The Prime Minister told Conservatives today there would be no policy change for change's sake and no shift to the right. He'll take on Tony Blair's new Labour Party on the centre ground of politics. He said both parties would be talking Tory language at the next election, but it would be the Conservatives who meant it. Mr Major said he wouldn't be rushed on Northern Ireland. He spoke of his commitment to the National Health Service, but mostly he offered steadiness and continuity. Our political editor, Michael Brunston, reports from Bournemouth on the closing speech of the Conservative Party conference.
They deliberately cut the great blue desk in half to let John Major step forward to get closer to his audience, to deliver what his people called an intensely personal speech, a message from the heart written almost entirely by himself. The first message, no shift to the right to counteract the threat from Labour. It was Labour that had moved towards the Tories. However,
buying Tory policies from Labour is like buying a Rolex on the street corner. It may bear the name, but you know that it isn't real.
Throughout this speech, like a motto theme in a symphony, was the idea of no change for change's sake. But in education, changes were still needed to lighten teachers' loads. They should be marking homework, not doing it, and to encourage Mr. Major's great love, sport.
Of course it can't supersede maths and English, though how I longed for it to do so when I was at school. But it must take its proper place alongside them. We are therefore changing the national curriculum to put competitive games back at the heart of school life.
So, sport would be played by every pupil from 5 to 16, and there needed to be more nursery education.
So I've asked Gillian Shepherd to work up proposals to provide places for all 4-year-olds whose parents wish them to take it up. This is a long-term proposal, but we intend that this new provision will begin to come on stream during the lifetime of this Parliament.
But the biggest reaction came as Mr. Major dealt with health. Here the words really were from the heart. People had noticed him using a walking stick, he said, during Mr. Yeltsin's recent visit to Chequers.
I was using a walking stick because I injured my leg badly in a car accident 30 years ago. For a while, that many years ago, I thought I might lose it. It was saved by treatment on the National Health Service. Against that background, is it likely that I would damage the National Health Service or privatize it? Mr. President, I can tell you, not while I live and breathe will I take that away.
Surprisingly, after a week in which Europe has been fiercely debated here, Mr. Major mentioned it only briefly. In fact, he spent more time on South Africa. More words from the heart came on Northern Ireland. There were tears in the hall as he remembered the atrocities in the province and in one British town.
The agony of Warrington and the heart-rending memories of Tim Parry and Jonathan Ball, who will never know the future that should have been theirs. What did those 2 little boys ever know of political disputes? But we cannot let history freeze us into inaction. There is a chance, a window for peace, in the words of the Old Testament, which is common to both traditions in Northern Ireland. There is a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. The people of Northern Ireland are sick of war. It is for them that we must build a time of peace.
That drew the Prime Minister's review of his ideas and policies to a close, and in ending, that motto theme again about change.
Change for the sake of change should never appeal to any Conservative. This party must stand for continuity and stability, for home and for health. My trade has never been in adjectives. I shall be patient. I shall be realistic. I shall ask for patience and for realism in others. And I promise you this, I shall put my trust in results. Thank you.
A low-key speech, moderate applause at first building as the Cabinet stepped forward and the familiar rituals began. In fact, the organisers had tried to discourage the red flags, too much like a Labour rally, they'd said. But Land of Hope and Glory rang out, the representatives sang, Mr. Major even kissed one or two of them. Not one of the great political speeches of our time, but those who heard it here said, a quiet reassurance that they'd want it. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Bournemouth.
And live now to Michael Brunson. Michael, why was it so deliberately low-key?
Well, John, a conference like this, and you can probably see, and perhaps you'll hear in a moment, the clearing up is still going on behind me. A conference like this operates on 2 levels. But the first and most important level is for the audience in the hall. These are the party faithful. These are the party activists. And Mr. Major decided that he wanted to talk directly to them. In fact, he told some friends afterwards that he felt a great warmth coming back from them. They have been annoyed this week that the media, people like myself, have concentrated on people like Norman Lamont and Lord Tebbit. They think that that's been a distraction. They've wanted reassurance that though times are bad for them in the opinion polls at the moment, that they're on the right course with the right policies. And that was precisely the message that John Major was trying to get across to them today.
Well, away from Bournemouth, how do you think it'll play in the country at large?
Well, it's for the voters to decide, isn't it? The voters would put the record of the Tory government over 15 years, and particularly, of course, voters will remember, will they not, that taxes are going up under the Tories in the short term. So when it comes to it, the voters are going to have to set it all out in their own mind. But what Mr. Major was saying here today was, don't expect us to trim our policies to the right, particularly, as some are suggesting, just because we're facing a threat from Labour. We're going to stand on our record. Indeed, during this week, he has specifically said this, he thinks, is perhaps the week when things started turning the Conservative Party's way.
Thank you, Michael. Israeli commandos stormed the hideout near Jerusalem tonight where the Israeli army corporal was being held. He was killed along with 3 of his kidnappers and 2 of the commandos. It happened only hours after the kidnappers had extended their deadline to kill Corporal Waxman. Colin Baker has the latest.
The Islamic extremists had just announced a 24-hour reprieve for their hostage, Corporal Nachshon Waxman, when Israeli commandos stormed the building. Reports still filtering through military censors say some kidnappers were killed, 2 Israeli soldiers died, and when the operation was over, the young soldier was also found dead. A few hours earlier, as the Sabbath came in, the soldier's mother lit candles and called for all mothers to join her in lighting a candle for her son's freedom. She just made a final appeal to the Hamas group holding her son.
There will be no peace of mind for me, and I won't stop worrying until Nachshon is home with us and I can hold him in my arms.
It now seems that Corporal Waxman was not being held in the Gaza Strip, but in a small village near the West Bank town of Ramallah, less than 10 miles from the family home in Jerusalem. This Arab town has been a hotbed of Palestinian fundamentalism since Israel occupied the territories. Here, Hamas has strong support. Palestinians opposed to the peace accord, Arabs dedicated not just to an Israeli withdrawal from the West Bank, but to the replacing of the State of Israel by the State of Palestine. Sources in Israel tonight say the Israeli intelligence forces directed the army to a house on the outskirts of Ramallah, having persuaded the kidnappers that a reprieve for Corporal Waxman might bring about a deal in which Palestinian prisoners would be released. Just a year ago, the handshake between PLO leader Yasser Arafat and the Israeli Prime Minister Rabin and Foreign Minister Shimon Peres that today won all 3 a share of the Nobel Peace Prize. The Israeli cabinet has been holding emergency sessions to discuss the implications of the kidnapping on the peace plan. At one stage, Arafat was told he'd be held personally responsible for the hostages' safety. However much a failure tonight's attack was, that it took place on the West Bank and not Arafat's Gaza Strip may now put the peace talks back on course.
The British couple who bought a Romanian baby for adoption this summer and tried to smuggle her home were ordered to pay a heavy extra price today, 2 years and 4 months jail in Bucharest. They're still on bail pending an appeal, but are said to be absolutely devastated by the sentence. Kevin Dunn reports.
Adrian and Bernadette Mooney were not in court to hear their sentence, the severity of which shocked observers of the case. The Mooneys were the first foreigners to face trial for breaking strict new adoption laws, and it seems the court wanted to make an example of them. The judge who read out the sentences also jailed the 3 Romanian middlemen the Mooneys paid. And the baby's teenage gypsy parents will also go to jail once they have reached the age of 18. The British couple's lawyer said the sentences were too harsh.
Their guilt was not so big. I am surprised by this solution.
Police arrested the Mooneys, who've already legally adopted a Romanian baby, on the border with Hungary. In the back of their car, sedated and in a cardboard box, they found 5-month-old baby Monica. The Mooneys admitted paying £4,000 for her, but claimed in court they believed they were acting legally.
Shattered. Upset? Yeah.
Their relatives received news of the sentences with shock.
I was absolutely devastated when I heard it. I just couldn't believe it. And now I'm beginning to get angry by it because I just think it's so unjust. It really is so unjust.
The family fears the couple will just waste away in a Romanian jail.
They definitely will not survive the
They
jail.
won't come out of Romania,
No,
not
they won't.
walking.
They
I've
won't.
told Mr. John Redwood they'll come out in boxes, that's all.
The Moonies will remain on bail in Bucharest while they appeal against the sentences. As for baby Monica, now 8 months old, she will stay in a Romanian orphanage for the foreseeable future.
As we heard earlier, the Prime Minister devoted a large part of his Bournemouth speech to Northern Ireland, where the loyalist terrorists' ceasefire is now nearly a day old. Mr. Major had already spoken on the phone to the Irish Prime Minister Albert Reynolds about that and other developments. Our Ireland correspondent Tom Bradby reports from a changed Belfast.
Tonight, the incident room at police headquarters here tells a simple story. 3,170 terrorist-related deaths in 25 years, but none today. Hopefully, the conflict is over. Northern Ireland now faces the prospect of creeping normality. The troops are still here, but even for them, life is changing.
You can talk to people instead of just passing them by. We're not so much ignored now. It's good to talk to people all over.
In Catholic areas, people were relieved. Almost everyone believing today probably marked the start of a new era.
Well, the conflict may be over, but the political settlement will take a lot longer, you know.
Change is just one of these things that people are going to have to realise that will take place in time and time only. I mean, we've had 25 years of troubles. Why suddenly panic now to get changes all of a sudden? Have to be done slowly but surely.
So what does happen next? In Britain, there'll be a cabinet subcommittee meeting to discuss the latest developments, followed quickly by a debate in the Commons, probably before the end of the month. It's likely the government will announce a security initiative, some troops taken off the streets or even withdrawn altogether. Then November could see another major Reynolds summit, probably in London, and before Christmas, exploratory talks between the government and Sinn Féin.
The process of reaching a lasting political agreement could take years, and there are many difficult issues to resolve. All the terrorist organizations are concerned about their prisoners and about how their areas are policed. Peace certainly isn't guaranteed, but even so, a few months ago today would have been unthinkable.
Peace, though, is slowly becoming a reality. People in Belfast tonight going out for the first time without the fear of terrorist violence. Phil Collins was playing here largely to a generation who've no idea what it's like to live without the troubles. Tom Bradby, News at 10, Belfast.
Still ahead on News at 10, how Saddam Hussein continues to string the West along. Russia's lost children, what the Queen won't see on her visit next week. And round-the-world walker Fiona Campbell celebrates her journey's end.
Well done, guys!
Rover dealers, we don't believe our job ends with the sale of a car. We believe that's where it begins.
Start collecting tokens in this Saturday's Daily Telegraph, and you can save money on meals for two at 500 restaurants nationwide. The Dine Out card, only in the Daily Telegraph.
It's a fact that 9 out of 10 people still aren't eating enough fibre. So it's worth knowing that in every bowl of Kellogg's All Bran, there's about as much fibre as you'd find in 9 nutritious slices of brown bread. Kellogg's All Bran, a great fibre provider.
At Halfords, there's £5 off a Stop Lock 2. And Castrol GTX is only $6.99. This trolley jack is down £6. There's a £2 saving on Haynes manuals. And 20% off all Curver toolboxes and stack-on storage systems. Reserve your Christmas bike now for only £15. Get £3 off Halfords cycle light sets. So make sure you switch on to Halfords.
If I'm cold, I'll turn up the heat. I don't care about global warming.
We should fit proper draft excluders.
Oh, don't start.
We're paying to heat this house twice. Once to heat the room and once to heat the draft. Look, we must fit draft excluders.
We could get a bigger cat.
Cutting down drafts is just one way to cut your heating bills. For more, call this number.
Fiona Campbell is putting her feet up tonight with good reason. Today, the 27-year-old reached John O'Groats at the end of her round-the-world walk. She was only 16 when she set off across the United States. On she went across Australia and up through Africa. Out of Africa, she carried on north through Europe and on to John O'Groats, a total of 19,586 miles. She said today she'd never walk alone again. Ian Glover-James reports.
Mad or magnificent, this extraordinary adventure by the Marine officer's daughter who became a modern-day Marco Polo. Fiona Campbell set off at 16 from John O'Groats. Now she's back, the first woman to walk round the world.
I just wanted to see how far I could go.
Annabelle.
And I needed a challenge. And step by step, slowly, slowly, I got there. Well, I made a promise that I'd walk every step, and I didn't break that promise, but along the way I had so many people helping me. Little gestures of kindness, humanity.
But crossing Africa saw Fiona's greatest sufferings. She was mistaken for a cannibal and rescued by the French Foreign Legion. She was robbed, beaten, and nearly raped. Crossing Africa was a triumph that took its toll.
There have been a lot of low points. But I think the lowest you can get is when you stop believing in yourself. And I've been there a few times.
Her walk was not without acrimony, with rows over sponsors and support teams. Now all that was forgotten.
Well done, guys.
We think it's a tremendous achievement. We're tremendously proud of what she's done.
And away from the cameras, a proud father gave Fiona his Marine's green beret. On it, the service motto, by land and sea.
Just when it looked like the latest Gulf crisis was easing, the United States has issued a new warning to Saddam Hussein's troops. The American Secretary of State, William Perry, said American forces might attack the president's Republican Guards if they didn't pull back from southern Iraq. Our Middle East correspondent, Robert Moore, reports from Kuwait.
The US Secretary of Defense, William Perry, arrived in Kuwait with a stark warning that some Iraqi troops had stopped their retreat, were digging in, and once again represented a threat to Kuwait. He warned that Saddam Hussein must order his army still further back or face the consequences.
If heavy Iraqi units remain in the south, we will expand our current deployment, and we will consult with our allies about the additional application of force as an appropriate response.
Certainly, the deployment of troops is continuing, and in the coming days, American ships carrying tanks and heavy armor will dock in Kuwait. The message is that this time, the Americans will take no chances with Kuwait's security. The Russian Foreign Minister Andrei Kozyrev, also in Kuwait City, brought a very different message, claiming that Baghdad is ready to live in peace with Kuwait. It leaves Moscow and Washington far apart on how best to handle Saddam Hussein.
Better complete 1, 2, 3!
Britain's troops here, the Royal Marines of 4-5 Commando, are left with little idea of where their mission is heading. They are, of course, preparing for combat. But the whole atmosphere for the forces on the ground is one of uncertainty. Kuwait is still calling for a military exclusion area in southern Iraq, which, if violated by Saddam Hussein, would trigger immediate Allied military action. But few other countries seem to support so radical a measure. So exactly 1 week after this confrontation first began, and Kuwait is now flooded with foreign troops. But it still has no means of stopping Saddam Hussein from provoking a fresh crisis. Robert Moore, News at 10, on the Kuwaiti-Iraqi border.
Here, prison officers warn tonight there's going to be more trouble in many jails because of overcrowding. The latest figures show more than 50,000 people are being held, the highest number for 6 years. Some prisons may have to build emergency accommodation to cope with even more admissions. A dinky toy which cost 6pence when it was first sold in 1936 was today sold for the price of a new family car, £11,500. The model, in mint condition, was bought by a collector from Paris. And intimate love letters between the Prince of Wales and Camilla Parker Bowles will not be included in a new royal biography, according to Buckingham Palace. They insist the Prince's private correspondence was not handed over to the author of the book, broadcaster Jonathan Dimbleby. More formal royal matters, the Queen is preparing to fly to Russia for a state visit. She leaves on Monday. An important part of her visit will be meeting young people. For tonight's special report, our Moscow correspondent has been to one school on the Queen's itinerary, but he also has exclusive pictures inside a clinic which the Queen will not visit. It's where they treat the young victims of Moscow's twin problems, alcohol abuse and attempted suicide. Here's Julian Mannion's report.
At school number 20 in the center of Moscow, some of the children that the Queen will visit next week. But these children are not entirely typical of Russia. Well-dressed, well-fed, well-taught, many of them are the offspring of the new elite, the sons and daughters of bankers or government officials. For School 20 has always been a showpiece of Russian education, a place where the children are proud of learning English and proud that the Queen is coming.
I think this school is one of the privileged schools in Moscow, and it's very prestige. I think that's why.
A few miles away, another face of childhood in Moscow, as doctors fight to save the life of a 13-year-old girl who tried to commit suicide by swallowing a bottle of pills. There's now a wave of child suicides and alcohol abuse among the young. Russian experts here at the Filatov Clinic say it's often caused by family breakdown in the present climate of social decay and financial despair.
Every day we see more of them, 5 or 6 a day who've got drunk or taken an overdose of pills. Their lives are difficult, their parents are under pressure, and the children are mentally fragile.
In the emergency room, Andrei Vasilyev, who's still only 13, is suffering violent spasms. The doctors have strapped his hands to the bed. A few hours ago, Andrei took a massive overdose of sleeping pills. Now the medical staff are injecting a tranquilizer. Nothing is known about why this boy tried to commit suicide. But what the doctors do know is that in the lawless streets of Moscow, a child like Andrei can buy enough pills to kill himself for about £3. On the day we filmed at the clinic, 4 children were being treated for deliberate drug overdoses. Russia's recorded child suicide rate is more than 50% higher than Britain's, and poor official statistics mean that the real rate is likely to be higher still. The clinic must also detoxify young children who've been allowed to take drugs or drink by the negligence of their parents. 3-year-old Nadia inhaled dangerous fumes after she was abandoned in a burning apartment by her alcoholic mother. And Russia's traditional curse of drink is doing increasing damage to the young. Sergei is in coma after half a bottle of vodka. For some of these children and their parents, the shock and shame of treatment will be enough. For others, it's the first step to a Dickensian nightmare. 2 weeks ago, 11-year-old Alyosha was treated for drunkenness at the Filatov clinic. Today, he's in a juvenile detention center after trying to break into a shop. The boy, whose only support in the world is an alcoholic father, now faces a future in the criminal underworld, the growing dark side of modern Russia. The Queen may get a glimpse of the problem when the crew of the Royal Yacht Britannia holds a party for Russian orphans next week. And certainly the crisis among this country's young can no longer be ignored. Julian Mannion, News at 10, Moscow.
The other side of Moscow. When the Queen arrives there, she'll be the first British monarch to set foot on Russian soil. Edward VII met Tsar Nicholas II in 1908, but on a yacht off the coast of Estonia. And on that historical note, we end News at 10. Have a good weekend. Good night.